please, everyone, please give a warm welcome to Colin Baker.
I'm not as loud. So welcome everyone, how are you?
Pretty darn good, thank you. I'm cold, so I won't be doing any mouth-to-mouth resuscitation today. So
I'll do it instead.
but apart from that, I'm PDF, pretty damn fine.
That's good.
What did you do?
Pretty damn quickly.
Oh, I was going to say pretty damn cute.
Cute is not spelled with a Q.
I know that.
We've known each other a long time.
Long time.
So Colin, you're...
Ask me.
Yes. You were the sixth Doctor,
Yes.
weren't you? Yes. So I heard that when Doctor Who first came out in 1963, you were a law student, I believe, and you first saw, you went to your digs and you were watching it. What was your first impression of Doctor Who?
Well, I remember, I don't know where I'd been, but I came in and I was in a basement flat in Lancaster Gate in London. And you came in the front door and there was a little landing and steps that went down to a great big room in which was television. And I took off my coat and put it over the banisters. And I leaned as this programme started. And I was still leaning 25 minutes later when it finished, because I hadn't even taken the opportunity to go downstairs, because I was riveted. Now, I know if you're looking at it today, you'll think, how could anyone be riveted by that? But that was state-of-the-art television in 1963. And all those people who say to you, I love Doctor Who because of the shaky sets, I'm talking rubbish. They didn't notice the shaky sets then, because all the sets in all the shows shook, because they were all studio-based and prone if you nudged them to do a wobble. So all that is kind of post-justification, because some people feel embarrassed to say they liked something that looked like Naff now. But in fact, we were all riveted by it. And it was like, there was another series called Quatermass, which was on at the same time, or about the same time, which was stunning. And there wasn't a lot of that kind of television on there. And I was in my early 20s. So, which is just a kind of age of males particularly, who like that kind of program. And myself and my 5 fellow law students in that flat were all transfixed by it. And we had good taste, because that's when the Beatles were out.
It's true, you know, what you were saying, we didn't know then, you couldn't possibly, there was nothing to compare television to. That was what it was.
Yeah.
And so no, I did a thing just to tell you, says this all, I think. I had to do a thing for the 50th for Worldwide BBC. And I was told just before I went on that the interviewer thought Doctor Who was the name Who, you see. I was using the best word I could there. And so I thought, oh, this is boding well, isn't it, for a live interview on the 50th anniversary. And so his first thing was to show the script and say, oh, look at that, oh, isn't that quaint, the wobbly set. I said, well, then why am I here 50 years later talking to you? That's shutting up.
Power to the people.
Yeah.
Can you all hear all right at the back?
Yeah. If not, you can come towards the front.
Or we can use the microphone if you want us to.
Yeah.
Right.
Projection.
No, she's a new young actress.
That's why you couldn't hear
She
me
might
say
need a
projection.
microphone.
Yes.
Would you like one, darling?
Thank you so much.
You
Can you hear me now?
No.
If I'm asked a question.
No, I have got a question
No,
for you.
I'm more here to listen, I'm not going to lie. I want to put my feet up and hear you.
Come here, sweetie. Let me take your feet. There. You just
They're
leave
new
them.
as well. They're new.
There we are.
Anyone else
It's
watch
nice.
Derek? Do you ever watch Derek? She's brilliant. She's brilliant.
She is. You are absolutely
thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was a wonderful job to do. I've spoken to a few fans as well today. It's always nice when you get to meet people who've been touched by a show. And it did that. Not a lot of TV does that. Doctor Who's done it to make people run behind the sofa, which is amazing. That's, it's pushing you to do something, and Derek pushes you to call your nan if you haven't spoken to her in a while. And that's powerful, isn't it? Yeah.
Most
Which
definitely.
doctor were you with?
Matt Smith.
Ah,
Yeah, and James Corden, wasn't he?
I like that.
Oh, he's lovely. We'd like to meet him one day.
Yeah.
He is.
It's a joy to actually work with him.
Oh, most definitely.
Isn't it?
Yeah, lovely,
He's married to
lovely
Colin
man.
as well. Thank you.
like Holly, you played a completely different role. Like you weren't a companion, you got a really completely different thing. So you played with alongside James Corden,
Yeah.
Gavin Stacey, really like him.
Shut my legs now.
How was that like?
She's still going.
It's comfortable, but
She's from Barry.
oh, bloody hell. Go on,
I'll start
sorry.
going into the accent now then, won't I bet? So yeah, you played alongside James Corden. Now he's such an amazing actor, he's so big at the moment. What was that like working alongside him? Did you bounce off each other?
Well, yeah, he's really great improv. We did sumo styley. Come on, James, come at me. No, we didn't. We didn't literally bounce off each other. Him and Matt, you could tell, because I was sort of just sort of in and out quite quickly, relatively. There's a couple of night shoots, but they had built up quite a lot of chemistry by then, and it really helps, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're flagging a bit, and when the two leads, they've got real chemistry, and they're laughing and joking and doodling bits, and it was just keeping you awake, I think, and keeping you up throughout. Night shoots can be a bit. You go a bit stir crazy, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was because you played Kelly, didn't you? So how did you get that role then? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think it might prove my mum's psychic, because one day she was just watching an advert for Doctor Who came up, and it's a British staple, and she's never said this to me, but she just turned to me and she said, "You're going to get in Doctor Who before next year Christmas." And as soon as she said it, she was like, "Oh, that's a bit weird. She's not a witch or anything. Maybe she should be." But and then I got an audition about a week later and thought, "Oh God, maybe she's right." And I did end up getting a part in it. So it just proves that mums know best.
Oh, exactly.
It was an incredible. When you get that, I mean, that's one that you want on your CV. As a young actor growing up, I really wanted the bill on my CV, because every actor I'd ever seen had the bill on there. So I thought, well, I'm not anything if I haven't got that on there. But that and Doctor Who are two that you just, if you can, absolutely, it's a privilege to have that on your CV. And you get to do things like this as well. So
Oh,
great.
very lucky, all three of you. It's been such a massive thing. Doctor Who was its 50th anniversary recently. Am I to believe that Peter Davidson, the doctor who preceded you, he sort of went to the producers or something of the BBC and put all of it together? Is that correct, Colin?
Not quite like that.
Quite a bit wrong.
What happened was that over a couple of years, I mean, if you've seen the Five-ish Doctors, which was the half-hour film that Peter, Sylvester and I and a few others made, it more or less accurately, if slightly humorously, portrays what actually happened, which was, we would come to events like this and we knew that the 50th anniversary was imminent. Have you heard anything? No. Have you? No. Have you? No. And then there were phone calls, and just wondering if you'd heard. No. And I knew, I think, that I do recall saying, it's not going to happen. Because with the best will in the world, in the same way as when I'm sitting out there with my photographs, doing autographs, and a nice innocent young child comes up, looks at the photograph of me taken in 1983, does that, looks back down, and if they're vaguely polite, they say, "Is that you?" If they're less clued up, they'll say, "When's he arriving?" Which I've had a few times. And that would be a problem, because if those Time Lords were supposed to be eternal, regenerate, how did I get old since I became Sylvester? Now, of course, if they chose to, they could find a way of explaining that. But I think if you're doing a big special, it needs to be a very good story. And ramming 9 of us into a good story isn't easy. So it was much better to keep it as it was. And I am of the opinion that it didn't even need the inclusion of someone who, was he there as a doctor? Was he a librarian? What was he? I just thought that was odd. I know the fans wanted to see Tom in it, but not only did it look odd, but it also made the rest of us rather irritated. Even though nobody will admit it. And you will cut this out of these films, right?
Nobody leaves this room either. You have to sign
I know
away.
these people well, I can trust them. I don't trust them. So that was going on. And then Peter said, Peter had, in the past, he'd done a brilliant, he was supposed to go to a convention in America, had to cancel last minute to a West End show and made them a little movie. And in that movie, he was sitting in his dressing room. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Sitting in his dressing room in the West End. Nice large dressing room with flowers. And he's saying, I'm so sorry I can't be with you in Los Angeles this weekend. As you can see, I'm backstage at the theatre where we're doing Legally Blonde, the musical. And as he's saying that, the door opens, and in comes the star of Legally Blonde, whose name is Sheridan Smith. And Sheridan says, Peter, what are you doing in my dressing room? And he goes, oh, I was just, get out. She said, go get your husband. And we follow Peter down the corridor, we open the door, and it's a little dressing room he's in. So the next shot, he says, oh, well, I'll continue in a minute. He's sitting in front of a roaring fire, comfortable armchair, drink in his hand. Sorry about that, I was interrupted, but to carry on, then the door opens again, and in comes David Tennant, saying, Peter, what are you doing in my house? And the film is like that. It's him apologising, but in a very humorous way.
It's wonderful.
It's a very funny film. And he had the idea of doing something similar about us not being in the 50th anniversary special. The bit that wasn't right was him going to the BBC.
Yes.
We never went anywhere near the BBC. But he got a script together, asked us if we wanted to join in. And someone at the BBC knew someone at the BBC who said, you know, you can borrow our resources. But there was resistance from higher up. This is Peter's story, so I let him tell it at another time. But basically it was, we are not cooperating with this much, until it became evident when the list of all the people who wanted to be in it became clear, that suddenly they wanted to be in it too, and were included obviously. So we were able to use their facility. But there was a point that Peter has told the story, so I can tell you, when someone who should be nameless, but you can guess who it is, said there's not enough Matt and David in this, and there should be less you and Colin or Sylvester, and more of Matt and David. And Peter, the whole point is the three of us not being in it. Well, I think it'd be a better film if you hadn't. But fortunately, Peter stood up to them and won. And David was very helpful. So Matt and David had big parts in our film, which is lovely. And there were those lovely bits like John Barrowman's family and all that stuff. And then Peter Jackson being in it. It just grew and grew and grew. But it's 90% David, Peter's invention. We chipped in and stuff. And Sylvester's very inventive. I like to pride myself a little that I have a few ideas. And I am very proud of the oversight. And it did what it was supposed to do. It was, as Peter said in the script, it's for the fans. Because obviously we didn't get paid for it. We are asked whether we do another one. We would love to. I think the three of us worked extraordinarily well together. It really is great big me, little tiny Sylvester, and perplexed Peter, wandering around and doesn't know what the hell's going on. It's a lovely mixture of characters. But the only problem is, if we did it again, it would have to be properly funded. We couldn't get 3 cameramen, 3 editors, and all the 3 locations. We've had a couple of ideas, but it would need to be crowdfunded, I suggest. But I don't think we'd have too much trouble.
I don't think.
That's
No.
why we lock the doors now.
They crowd
Don't give us money.
You're not leaving.
Considering how massive, Doctor Who has been, why would the BBC,
Some of the modern ones are quite thin.
why wouldn't the BBC want to be involved with something like that? They're crazy. It sounds like they let you do all the legwork, and then when you finally make a big hit of it, they start coming in.
Suddenly we have the names of an executive producer on it. Guess who?
It's like the same thing with Rocky Horror Picture Show, I believe Patricia was saying. She had the same thing. But this isn't about Rocky Horror Picture Show, this is Doctor Who. So, Katy, you were with John Pertwee, weren't you? I got that right. Yeah.
Lovely John.
Yes.
Mr. Charisma.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you were the companion to him. So how did you get that role? How did that come about?
It came about that I was doing a series for the other channel, and
You're allowed to say ITV.
I couldn't remember it. Anyway, apparently they'd seen, I love this, Richard Frankton said, oh yes, well of course I was the chap reading in with all the girls, I read it with Katy. I let him go for a lot of years before saying, no, I never met you and you weren't there. And he went, oh, didn't I? No. Anyway, so back to the home, Richard. Anyway, so I was doing this other series, so I couldn't get in, and by this time they'd taken the usual sort of 500 girls, including Shakira Kane, Michael Caine's stunning wife, and some other simply stunning ladies. And so they shortlisted it down to 3, and for some reason, apparently, Barry Letts said, there's just one more I want to see, but she's doing another show, so she can't get you. Anyway, eventually, they said, well, we'll just wait and see her. I know, more fool them. And I got there, and I got so terribly lost because I can't see. I mean, there was no such thing as lenses in those days. And because my glasses were so thick, I thought, well, I'll never get a role wearing these. You know, I'm going to look like Olive out of all the buses, you know, which is not exactly what you want as a companion. Anyway, with great respect to Olive. And so I got terribly lost. I had a dreadful cough. I sounded like I'd been with Lassie dogs over here, and kennels off. And I finally got to where I was, very late, and they said, oh, well, Katy, would you like to read something for us? So I went, and they said, perhaps not, as I read with my nose, and that's what you can see. So I still look like I was at a Lassie dog show. And so then they said, we'll go and do an improvisation. I thought, well, I can do that. So I did, and which I won't even bother to tell you what it was, but it was all to do with a hat stand and devils and then turning into fur hats and laughing and screaming and all that.
Well, you haven't tell us what it was about.
Well, I've changed my mind. I just remembered. You know, my memory sort of kicks in and kicks out. And anyway, so the next day I got a phone call saying we'd very much like you to play Joe Grant, and that was the beginning of that. And during that time I got to work with Pat Troughton and the 3 Doctors, and so that was lovely. And
just think, if you hadn't got that part, you could be married to Michael Caine.
yes,
No?
well,
Because you would have been free, wouldn't you?
yes, I don't know that he would have looked at me and thought, oh yes, she's a bit of all right, when you look at her, I mean, hello.
You look all right now, and you look even better then.
Oh.
Should we leave them to it, guys? Come on. Got some catching up.
And so, yes, it was lovely, and because they wanted somebody that was very young and very much of the now, and they wanted somebody who could also ask questions of the scientific things so that they were explained, because we never forget, we mustn't forget there are children who watch this show, so it's all very well babbling on about science, they need to understand it. So and also you were able to watch the character grow up in front of your very eyes, and I think the miniskirts apparently got a lot of daddies watching. I just throw that in.
It wasn't the miniskirt.
Oh, what was it?
The girl who was wearing them.
Yeah.
Oh, so sweet.
What a charmer.
It's true though.
But I'll tell you something about you.
Well,
When they were later on, when they were doing casting Doctor Who, I remember saying this to you. I said, you'd make a wonderful Doctor Who.
Did you?
Yes, I did. And when the time came and he got it, I was so thrilled because I knew that Colin would be a brilliant Doctor Who,
It's definitely.
in spite of the costume.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to that in a minute. But, you know, you played the 6th Doctor, but before that, you were actually an extra, weren't you? Like you had sort of a supporting role on there. Can you tell me about that, how you got
I was
that?
in a Peter Davison story
Yes.
called Marvel Infinity, playing Maxil, who was the chief of the security guard on Gallifrey. And I regarded the Doctor as an irritant, and I shot him. That was the end of episode 2, I think. that everyone thought I killed him, but of course he survived.
Too
Selfish bastard. It was my move to the role, but I bided my time. And in those days we used to rehearse it like a play. So you'd spend a week in a rehearsal room. At the end of that week, we'd run the whole thing as a live play for the producer and the cameramen and everybody. And at the end of the run, the producer, the lovely John Nathan Turner, came over to me and said, just remind me the name of this programme. I said, Doctor Who? Oh, it's not called Maxil then. I said, sorry, what do you mean? He said, you're playing it as if Maxil is the most important person in the room. I said, don't we all? Yeah. Don't we all? Each one of you out there is watching the rest of us. And you are the centre of your world. We are big parts in your life. You know, you leave this room, and many of you will never see each other again. You'll probably see me, but... oh, that wasn't big enough.
Could you encourage him, please? It's so...
The laughter track.
I'll hold up the sign. Right, you love.
And he said, if you would just leave a little room for us today. So I took the essence.
Graciously.
I mean, I was registering utter disdain for this man throughout. Do you know what a fingernail examining them? I'm an actor who's always believed in offering to enter. I've directed a few times. The worst people to direct are the ones who offer you nothing and who you have to pull it all out of. If someone gives you too much,
You can take it down.
you can take it down, or you can grab the bits you like. And I suppose that's what I was doing, though I wasn't aware at the time. So, in the end, I mean, John and I got on very well. There were other incidents. There was the famous hat. I had a hat, which I had to wear as Maxil, Chief of Guard, which was a huge thing with blue on top. And it looked exactly like a chicken. And so I gave it a name. I called it Esmeralda. And we did the first scene, and in order to get into the scene with I had to duck through the doors like that, and I thought that was very undignified for the head of the guard. So I was told to take the hat off and carry it, and it looked even more like it. So I'm afraid I succumbed to temptation. I was going, while other people were acting, and I had to be told to stop doing that. I didn't realise, in doing so, I was auditioning for the role of Doctor. Because 4 months later, when Peter said he was leaving, John rang me up and asked me if I could take over.
That must have been absolutely incredible.
So the answer is, misbehave,
Yes.
and people will notice you.
Or be
It's all
very,
good.
very late for an interview for a job, as sought after as the Doctor Who girl, trip over a lot, not be able to see, and suddenly you've got a role.
There was an actress that I knew who was auditioning for the RSC, and she did her modern bit, and they said, well, what's your classical piece? And she went to the side of the stage, picked up a spear, and went and stood in the middle. And I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm a realist. If I get into this company at my age, that's what I'll be doing. So I thought I'd show you what I look like. I got the job. I did 3 years in Stratford.
Just while we're on the subject of Shakespeare, just very quickly, my favourite review I ever got was when I was playing Ophelia at the Young Vic, and my Hamlet, we wore long pointed Shakespearean shoes, and my Hamlet was treading on me toes, right? And so he kept saying, you know, be gone, and I couldn't be gone because he was on my foot. And so I was doing an awful lot of trying to leave and then bouncing back into my Hamlet, right? And then finally he grabbed my arm. I don't know what, we looked like we were having this wrestling. And it was in the very early part. She had, at this point, was still completely sick. And suddenly all the buttons that were all up the dress all popped and they went boom, 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 across the stage. Finally he let go. I went flying off the stage, and the next day the review was the first Ophelia to start out mad and go slowly sane.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's my favourite review of all time.
Oh, wow. Colin, you finally get the job that you've been wanting for ages. What was that like then? You know, how did you celebrate? And tell us a bit about it.
Well, yeah. Whether I always want, it never occurred that I might be material for Doctor Who. I mean, when I was being Maxwell, I wasn't thinking if I do this, I'll get cast as Doctor Who. I was just doing what I normally do. So it came as, even when John asked me to come and see him, it never occurred to me that he was asking me to take over from Peter. I thought, because we got on well, he was going to say, do you fancy going out for dinner or something like that? So that was a shock. I've got two memories, main memories. One is, there's a certain amount of nerves in every job you do. Certainly in the theatre you're nervous, certainly on the first night, and it diminishes as days go by. And in television, it's a different kind of nerves because you can always do it again. So it's not like a stage where you've really got to do it, although the stage is very forgiving. You get out of stuff if it goes wrong. On television, if you go wrong, you just can't do it again. Although you don't want to in an ideal world. So there are nerves. But the only time I really didn't have, other than minimal nerves, was doing Doctor Who. Which, I don't know what that says. I think part of it is to do with all the other jobs I've done. I was either a subsidiary character or one of many main characters. This was the only time ever that I was the main character. And I found that quite kind of empowering, releasing. It's the only job I've ever done where I looked forward to go to work every day. I was never frightened about not knowing the lines. I knew them, because we rehearsed properly. Back then, it's different now, isn't it?
Well, just on that, it's interesting. When I did Sarah Jane Adventure, we did exactly the same format as we did. I know Doctor Who is very different now, and they do all sorts of different possibilities as well in Doctor Who now. So before we was telling me. But when we did Sarah Jane, everybody said, "Oh, it must be, is it so different?" I said, "No, we didn't even get that week's rehearsal. We were literally rehearsed shoot, and that was it."
Completely different.
We did, well, I meant to say completely different and much tougher.
Yeah.
Because, but the thing we had, you say we could retake. When we did it, it wasn't required. I mean, they were not happy if you had to do a retake.
No.
You would either have to swear or beg for it.
Well, I think the thing with Doctor Who always was, of course, that there were so many technical things going on.
Exactly.
You knew damn well that if you made a mistake the first time, you'd be covered because the camera would have missed a shot, or you'd always got 3 or 4 takes.
And you had computers by then. We didn't even have that sort of. So everything was.
So you always had several goes at it.
But we only if the special effects were effective.
Yeah, and they never were.
And well.
They never were first time.
No, that's what. And John used to have problems too because things used to be written down like mathematical equations on the floor, which of course I didn't see, so I learned. But of course, just as you go for a take, out would come the BBC man with the dry ice and the smoke, and John would go, "Right, Joe, hi there, hi, 3 + 3 is 6, and things like that.
We had a rehearsal at the TARDIS console, and bear in mind that since John, there had been 7 years of Tom, 3 years of Peter, and Pertwee's lines were still written all over the console.
Oh yes, he used to get. I was covered in lines. I mean, I had words up my arm, I had on my hand.
Well, have you heard the latest that in theatres they're talking about having, those things that have words? Yeah, the words.
Well, it's no good to me. I can't even see the other actor.
Well, that's a problem for you.
Well, I've just got to keep learning.
And somebody, possibly quite rightly, has said, you do it on radio. It's believable, it's credible. On radio, you read the lines. So, why can't they be there as a fact? I know someone who recently played The Dane. Fortunate enough for it not to be clear which one.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't act
Well, you
as
haven't
somebody
tried.
else's work.
You might want to.
Isn't that why Michael Gambon gave up theatre as well a couple of years ago? Because he's still doing film and stuff, but he just didn't want to.
It gets
Didn't want
harder
to do
as
that,
you get
yeah.
older.
And there's something so electric about theatre, isn't there? So now, even if you do get it wrong, that's kind of part of it. And you don't want to. I meant. You just deal with it, and that's the beauty and the fear and the
But
everything.
It has to come from within you.
Yeah.
How can someone else's? No, it doesn't compute in my poor pathetic little brain.
But you are of the generation that would cope. I've been with you on stage when the lines that were supposed to be said haven't been said.
Yes, Mr. Baker.
And we found something else to say.
Oh, you certainly did, Mr. Baker. That left everybody, including the entire audience, gobsmacked. And I was playing a character that was never supposed to laugh, which wasn't easy because Mr. Baker and Mr. Blair were constantly trying to make me laugh. So anything they did that was physical, I didn't see it, so it didn't matter. You know, trying to pour sherry in their hair, never got a laugh from me. But Mr. Baker came in too early once on a scene where he wasn't supposed to see us. And he comes in, largest life as only Mr. Baker can, and says, "Ah, King, there you are." And we both looked at him because it was a whole scene that was really not meant to see.
You shouldn't pause.
No, I will pause, darling. I mean, I never pause. And not even for thought. And
you're off stage and there's a pause, you come
he's
on.
on. So he comes in, and he looks, and you could suddenly see him go, you just sensed it, you knew it was wrong. And he went, "Ah, right, well, I'll just go into the garden and chase the aardvark." And this is an English country home, this is taking place. And neither Lionel or I could speak for about 10 minutes. I was gradually going back on. But
I don't know where it came from.
where did the aardvark? I thought, this is so lovely. I like this man a lot.
So, Holly, you've also been in quite a few other things since Doctor Who. You've done Dad's Army, and you've also been with Ricky Gervais, haven't you?
Yeah.
How has that been? What was that like, doing something completely different from Doctor Who and going to that?
Yeah, Ricky was wonderful to work with. That's a real, you know, when you get that audition through and you go for the original audition and you do it and you think they're pleased with you, but then you go back for the second one to meet him and you can't really compare that. And the first time you hear his laugh through the office door, you go, "Oh my God, it's actually him. And then he pops past you, go for a wee, and you think, Ricky Gervais, wheeze, what? Madness. And then, so the audition was amazing because I just improvised. There's a lot of improvisation. And before going into the audition, I had a load of ideas of what to play Vicky like. And then I remembered just before going in that it's Ricky Gervais. So don't do anything at all. Just be as close to that 15-year-old you might have been at 15. And I just sort of put her in a room with executives and people that she'd be really shy around. And I think I get really annoyed when I see people play rude girls and they just sort of do that and that's all it takes to sort of show you're edgy. And you think, no, it's not enough. And you're caricaturing a whole group of people. They use the word chav in the beginning for Vicky, and I hate that word for many reasons, but I can see what they're saying. And she's an underclass of people that you don't want to hire, you don't want to date, you don't want your daughter going out, you don't want your son going out, whatever. She's sort of pushed to the sides, much like the rest of the characters. So I just wanted to go in there, and I basically just ignored him for about 10 minutes on my phone, just tweeting while he was asking me questions. But I was just trying to play what a normal 17-year-old who's going to be more insecure than anything. So anyone who acts like, whatever, she's not actually that bad or brave. They're more so insecure more than ever, or they haven't been given the right path or whatever. So that's what I was trying to show with her. So I was glad, hopefully, I got not a caricature on screen. And Dad's Army was amazing. Just ticking boxes of people you want to work with all in one film, really.
Amazing.
But what you were saying as well, there was a lot of, there's obviously an age gap between me and some of the Dad's Army lot. But it wasn't that apparent until they'd sort of reminisce about the good old days. Do you remember we used to have breaks? Biscuit breaks, tea and coffee breaks. And we were stood there like, really? Really? Tell me about the old days when you used to have breaks. And rehearsal. There used to be a building in London, apparently, where you'd go for 3 weeks and rehearse. I've never heard it. I've never known anything like that. And I thought the bigger budget, the big shows you do, the big dramas you do, of course we're going to rehearse. Of course you are, but you don't. Often it's just with a quick chat with the director before you go on, and then you hope that you've got a few takes. But usually by the last tape, when they move on, you go, oh, I've got it. I know what to do now, and it's too late, because that's what rehearsal does, isn't it? You batter it out, and so they're all quite really different jobs. Doctor Who was amazing. I knew I was part of something really special, even though it was a really short job, and got to work with two amazing people. But yeah, Dad's Army was a real. Unfortunately, I was doing Derek and Dad's Army at exactly the same time, one's in Scarborough, one's in West London.
Yeah,
Yeah, and DCI Banks at the same time. It was all D's. It's a true story. But yeah, it was difficult because one was in Scarborough and one was in London, and each one was a different night, a different day. So every night I was on a train up and down. But they're the things you're not allowed to complain about because you've got 2 jobs. So shut your mouth.
Those were the days, weren't they? I remember doing 2 televisions simultaneously. In those rehearsal rooms, in adjacent rehearsal rooms. One rehearsal in the morning, the other in the afternoon.
Oh,
And I was walking on. I thought life was always a bit like that.
Yeah, it's just the money, isn't it? Sort of.
You know, I go back as far as, and it's interesting when you were just saying just now about, you know, sitting with the older actors. That was like for me in Doctor Who, with John and all these different, you know, Nick and all the, listening to all these incredible stories about this business that I was just embarking on was fascinating.
Yeah, and you can feel how much time has changed. Little things, you know, some things haven't changed, but often I think it's the lack of money now that would explain a lot of it, or just squeezing the money. You're able to get this quality out of this budget, which is a real shame, and we are, because we're all good at what we do, and that's everyone, and crew, art department, everyone. But it's a shame, isn't it, that we don't get that little bit extra for the tea, biscuits, and rehearsals. So if you're watching, anyone with money, funders.
But it's great, as you were saying, when you're doing like several jobs at the same time, it's wonderful. I was doing an arts and crafts series called Serendipity on television, when I was teaching people how to work with epoxy resins. I just finished playing a junkie, and at the same time as I was teaching people how to work with epoxy resins and weaves and things, I was commuting up to the Edinburgh Festival to play a 16-year-old mass murderous girl guy.
Wow. Sounds easy enough.
So you were sniffing the epoxy resin.
You got it, playing the junkie, and then going up and murdering people. It was great.
Sounds fun. Wow. What a CV.
So, as I've said, you know, you've just celebrated the 50th anniversary. Colin, what do you think about, what is it about Doctor Who that makes it so special? And what's the magic, you know, what magic do you think it is that makes it so special? I'll get there in the end.
It's the perennial question, and if we knew the answer, we'd all be making Doctor Who's new versions of it. What makes it special is that it's lasted 50 years. But why did it last 50 years? Well, we do need heroes. And this is somewhat controversial, but as the church is empty, which, you know, 200 years ago churches were full, and people believed in stuff a lot more. Now there's a lot less of that kind of belief around. So, this is my theory, that people need something else that they can believe in, even if it's not real, but they can believe in it. And I know a lot of people, I've had so many letters from people who've been in trouble, you know, emotionally, mentally, socially, who said they watch Doctor Who, and while that programme is on, they forget their problems, and they see some hope in the world. And I think the Doctor, in all his manifestations, provides something which is quite hard to come by anywhere else these days, which is the trust that there is somebody, but the trust that there is someone out there who cares about us. And the Doctor, the Lone Ranger, rides into town, and he leaves with Tonto, and they all go, "Who is that masked stranger?" And that's partly why Peter has asked him to sell it, Peter Dempsey. They said, "Do you want something?" I said, "A cat." Because think of Rudyard Kipling. I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places and times are alike to me. And I thought that kind of sums up the Doctor, the mysterious stranger who could make things better. And that kind of resonates. And it started at a time where in the 60s, when that was necessary. And it caught the imagination. And I think Pat Troughton has a lot to do with that. Because after 3 years, that programme could have died. And if he hadn't come at it from a completely different angle, and had been such a wonderful actor, that kind of louche, cosmic hobo character that he played. And everyone went, "Oh, he's the same, but different." And that provided the template for future generations. So the reason it's lasted is because by chance it came up with the right format at the right time. And when the regeneration thing came in, it gave it a stepping stone to a new life, which has gone on. And even though the BBC at that time was slightly embarrassed when I was doing it. BBC, as an entity, was slightly embarrassed about Doctor Who, science fiction. And then we had programmes like Life on Mars and Goodnight Sweetheart, both of which were very successful, both of which had a fantasy, sci-fi, time travel element. And suddenly, sci-fi became all right. Now we've got all the Marvel films and the sci-fi, not only all right, it's profitable. So now our niche has been taken over by the mainstream. We were there first.
Yes, most definitely.
Also, you know, television in my early day, and I'm a child of television, I mean, I'm a television addict, confessed addict, used to be absolute fantasy, you know, Mr. Egg, you know, the talking horse, and Gilligan's, totally bonkers, the flying nun, who could fly because, you know,
Yes.
you know, and it was wonderful. And then it was strange, somebody was saying the other day, after they just got, when Kennedy was shot, so much, because news used to be a tiny part of our television, and after Kennedy was shot, suddenly everybody was seeing live coverage, and suddenly we started to move out of television being this wonderful, entertaining fantasy with lots of light entertainers and singer. And suddenly we started to be able to see, we could look at life and reality. And it's grown and grown to what we have now, where we're watching wars live on television. And I think, you know, Doctor Who is something that takes us back, and as you say, people sitting who've had difficult times, and I suddenly get this wonderful belief and escapism, and, you know, and I think there's something in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry, but we really have to wrap that up. I'm really sorry we didn't have time to have any questions from the audience. I'm so sorry.
And I've got them all going, saying,
I know.
work out. Oh, let's have 2 questions. Go on.
Yeah, got time for 2 questions. Who's got a question? 2 questions then, please. Yes?
If you could choose the next Time Lord, who do you fancy for the job?
You mean fancy?
If I could choose myself, I would be braver than the BBC will be, and I would have a lady Time Lord.
Oh,
It's ridiculous, we've had 12 of them, and I'm in touch with my feminine side. But sadly, I suspect they will make the judgment correctly that they will lose some viewers if they do that. So what they will go for, in my humble opinion, is they're looking for another David Tennant. Because David Tennant got the girls watching. Doctor Who was a kind of province of the young male, mainly, for many years. I mean, some women watched, obviously, girls and families. But the Doctor Who fan club was entirely male, of young men who were looking at young companions with varying degrees of adoration. And there's a lot of people who wouldn't accept a woman as a doctor. I don't know why. And I think it would be a great idea.
If you chose the right...
Jennifer Lawrence would be perfect.
Helena Bonham Carter.
And I could be her companion.
So you have time for one more question. I'm really sorry.
Who do you think? Okay.
I mean, I think, you know, I wouldn't just say, yes, I agree with the women thing, but I think for me, anything that's done should be done for the right reasons, not because of it male, female, ethnicity, I can't even say that, ethnicity, you know, but I think you're right. I think they're going to go back towards looking for a sort of, you know, you've got a hero here, and it kind of works with the male. That doesn't mean I'm dismissing the female possibility, but you take someone a little bit bizarre like Helena Bonham Carter, or somebody who's a little bit wacky. You need that edge.